What's up, boys, girls, and everything in between? It is Raptor Patton again, playing some frickin' Starcraft original. I don't remember where we were. What were we doing? Holding on to this position, if memory serves. Anyway, so what do we do now? What is my life? We need more Vespin gas. What are you doing, Vespin gas? Why are you all just sitting there? Do things. Collect more minerals. Do your job. Ugh. Such a pain to keep up on these guys sometimes. Ugh. Anyway, so I was thinking about something. I think that in a lot of ways I've hit a sort of late 20s burnout. Like, have you ever felt the idea that you put so much time and effort into something with little to no gain? You ever feel that way? Does anyone know that feeling, that emptiness almost? Like you put so much effort into something and it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Like, who cares what you're doing? That you could try as hard as you want and you'll just end up being useless and pointless. Does anyone else get that feeling from time to time? Oh my frickin' crying out loud. Stop! 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 Ugh! Just put the thing there. It's annoying. There we go. But anyway, you ever feel just done? Just burned out and empty of everything? That's kind of where I've gotten in my life. Just empty. Like there's no point to anything. Like none of it really matters. You ever get that feeling? I think it's a problem with modern day culture and generations, is that our parents were given a lot. They were handed a world that was amazing, really, by the greatest generation, the ones who fought in World War II. And then they fucked it up and ruined our lives as a result of their own hubris. And now we, as young people, are largely paying the price. We are the ones who are in trouble. We are the ones who are forced to live in a world that doesn't care about us, that was not built to accommodate us, economically or otherwise. And so here we are, struggling to exist in a world that doesn't like us, that doesn't want us around, and then we get criticized endlessly for being millennials. I'm a millennial. I was born in 1990. Very solidly in that world. You know what I mean? And there were a lot of things that we were taught that we must do, or that was expected of us, or how the world would work, and the world just simply has not worked that way. I think that leads to a lot of problems and a lot of conflict in my generation. And then we have these older people who say things about how lazy we are. Well, I don't know. I served in the military for 9 years as a volunteer. The baby boomer generation barely could get by without draft dodgers, and even with a conscripted military force, they had to be conscripted. Those people didn't want to fight. They were baby boomers. Their parents had fought the war for them, right? There was nothing left to do. The wars were done. The world was a better place now. And my generation has had to be on the forefront of bearing the brunt of multiple wars around the world on an entirely volunteer basis. We've had to operate among older people who tell us how shitty we are. And there's no real reason behind that, outside of, I don't know, jealousy? Hatred? Just these people that raised us suddenly hate us. Now, there's always been issues between generations. That's something that you find if you read any historical text. Let's get you among these guys so things don't go crazy for you. Anything historical, you're like, oh yeah, no, each successive generation has pretty much hated the ones before it. Well, I would argue, why don't we change that perception? Why not? Why is that an absurd concept? To be like, hey, no, people do people things, and they're okay, and they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to be scared and try to figure out the world around them. They're allowed to try and live, and older generations don't believe such things. They're full of just hatred and malice and rage, and I don't get it. Is it because younger generations are smarter overall? Is it because younger generations have access to better avenues of knowledge, and you don't like that? You don't like that other people might go, oh yeah, no, I'm smart because being smart is expected now. You can't get away with being an idiot in the modern world. You could have back when you were a kid. In the 60s, you could have been an absolute moron and get away with it. Nobody cared. You could have dropped all the acid you wanted to, and that was fine. And now we've got people that are just struggling to pay rent, and we hate them for it. We go and use fast food all the time. That's just a staple. And then when the people that are providing us that food go, hey, I would really like to, I don't know, survive on the wages that I make here, we think it's the end of the damn world. You're the ones eating at fast food restaurants. I almost never do. I'm not the one supporting this. You are. There's old people that are like, yeah, McDonald's is for kids. Well, if you provided wages that were not constantly stagnating, if you kept the price of commodities to a reasonable level, then we wouldn't have these issues. If people were getting paid enough to exist, and then we think it's absurd that some people want to be alive. We think that that's liberal? Fuck the liberals. And yet we are convinced that some people deserve to die because they weren't handed money by their parents. Seems a little weird to me. But perhaps I'm actually a Christian and you're not. Which I believe. I believe that there are many people who claim to be Christians and are the opposite of that. It seems like a running trend that Christians, especially in my country of the United States, haven't the slightest clue what being Christian means. They use hatred and divisiveness as their defining features of being a Christian, which to me is a very not Christian way to do things. But perhaps I'm the ridiculous one. Maybe I am. I tend to be ridiculous sometimes. I tend to be a little bit goofy. Lately, though, I've just kind of reached this burnout. Kind of reached a stage where I'm like, I don't care anymore. Why does it matter? Why does any of this matter? Oh, for crying out loud. Oh, is that pretty funny for you? Like to attack my stragglers? Let my stragglers fight back. How about that? How about them frickin' apples? Put that in your pipe and smoke it, you Xenos assholes. But anyway, I digress. There's a lot of good that can come from the younger generations if we were not being hamstringed. Hamstrung? Hamstrung, probably. By generations before us who just seem to hate us. They're out to just put us down and control us and hate anything that we want to accomplish. They hate the companies that we founded. They hate the work that we do. Do you want us to all be coal miners? Is that your expectation? Because coal's dead. Sorry, bro. Your job's done. Maybe you should go get a real job doing what people nowadays are paid to do. I don't know. Just a thought. Maybe coal and oil are dying industries that need to go away. And perhaps oil workers are just being controlled by OPEC. Maybe it's the prices that are controlled by those in the Middle East that is causing you to not have jobs, to not have work, to not matter. But perhaps I'm wrong. So, it just seems like everything in this world is truly out to vilify and demonize my own generation, and then they wonder why we reject their traditional ideas of really anything. Why we don't give a shit what your values were in the 50s. Because you don't know our world. You were handed everything. We weren't. We were on track to be handed everything, and then the economy tanked. Which it shouldn't do, but I guess that's just the way that we see things now. We're just okay with the economy falling apart every few years. We don't care. We don't question that, do we? That would be a communist thing to do, is to go, hey, you know, this economy doesn't fucking work. Is there a better way to do this? Well, that's communist talk. What? Shut up. Go back to your fucking jazzy and your fucking depends, old man. You haven't been relevant since 1968 and you know it. And it's led me and a lot of the people of my age to just have this deep-seated hatred of older generations. Just an uncomfortable amount of antagonism between groups of people that really don't need that. We don't need hate in our world. But that's what we've been pigeonholed into, what we've been led to believe. I don't think that's right, but it is what it is. And there are certain people that have made it a point to create as difficult of a world as possible. As uncomfortable and painful and pointless world as possible, where the only thing that matters is money. where the only thing that we as a species should care about is how much money we have. We've become a superficial, empty, trivial culture, to use the words of Aldous Huxley. We're a trivial culture. We don't matter. What is it that American culture in the modern world has really contributed to the world? Very little. As far as culture, we've given them the Wonder Bra and Coca-Cola. Good. That's the defining feature of our culture. American culture's imprint on the world is McDonald's. It's billboards. It's advertisements. It's the selling and commodifying of human lives in order to sell a product. We are nothing but products and commodities in this modern world. There can be no other way around it. And that, to me, is deeply saddening. It just is. But some people support this system. Some people think that this system's the best thing that we have out there. Where are we under attack? There we go. Let's get everybody in on this, shall we? But, I mean, I read this thing once that gave me a chuckle. It was, we spent so long telling people that caring about their fellow men was communism, and now we have a society of people that just fucking hates each other. Because to be nice, and to share, to be understanding, that's clearly communist propaganda. There's no way that that could be something that Jesus said. There's no way that that is the true human nature. Cooperation, understanding. No. No, human nature, according to these people, is greed, and they double down on that, and they believe it wholeheartedly. And I just don't get it. I just don't. So in a lot of ways, I'm just burned out of the world. Burned out of existence, just floating and drifting in an existence that hates me. Even though my generation is the one that's borne the brunt of so many wars over almost 2 fucking decades now, on a volunteer basis only. And then another generation's gonna try and tell me that my generation's lazy. I mean, at least my generation didn't fucking back down when there was a call to arms. The baby boomer generation had to force their people into combat. Vietnam wasn't even a large conflict. We just had people that didn't want to fight. And I don't agree with the Vietnam War. I don't think we should have fought it. But if you're going to go by those standards, those baby boomer standards of supporting the military without question, then you don't have the luxury, in my eyes, of putting down a generation that has done far more than yours. Your generation was forced into battle, and many of them deserted, many of them dodged the draft, and you're going to tell my generation that we're lazy? Just doesn't seem fitting. I have little respect for the baby boomer generation. I believe wholeheartedly that they were handed everything and then fucked it up because they're lazy. I believe baby boomers are lazy people. They're half-wits. They're afraid of technology. They're afraid of knowledge. They're uncomfortable around the idea that they're not the smartest fuckers in the room. And they double down on it. So if anyone is watching this that was born before 1960, I would apologize. But, you know, apologizing is only something that I would do to people who deserve an apology. You guys don't. You're a shit generation, you tank this country. You are the problem. Does that offend you? Toughen up, snowflake. Sound familiar? Maybe stop being a fucking bitch. Also, maybe you guys should have fucking won in Vietnam. Instead of being fucking worthless and dying against a bunch of fucking Vietnamese rice farmers that barely wipe their own asses. But anyway, I think that's the video for the day. I'm not in a great mood, clearly. But I don't give a shit what you think. You all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.